of cracking the UPSC Civil Services examination? Unsure about where to start or how to navigate the challenging path to success? Vision IAS Delhi's GS Foundation Course 2026 is here to provide the right direction, support, and resources to transform your dream into reality. This holistic course is designed to prepare you for every aspect of the UPSC CSE, Prelims, Mains, and interview. Here's what makes this course a game changer. Complete syllabus coverage from GS Prelims to Mains, CSAT, Ethics, Essay, and Current Affairs. We leave no stone unturned. Top-notch faculty learn from Delhi's most experienced mentors who have guided countless toppers. Personalized mentorship, tailored feedback, and performance assessments to help you constantly improve. Exclusive current affairs preparation, master the dynamic part of the syllabus with PT 365 and Mains 365 sessions. This course isn't just about preparation, it's about building the confidence and strategy you need to excel. Batches starting for 2026, 2027 and 2028. Karol Bagh, 17th December, 9 a.m. 29th November, 5 p.m. GTB Nagar, 13th December, 6 p.m. 23rd December, 8 a.m. Your journey to UPSC success starts with Vision IAS.
Good afternoon, all of you. So I'll be talking about polity, international relations, and governance. Okay. So predominantly GS paper 2. Then we have in the prelim stage of the examination around 12 to 13 questions, although it may differ from year to year, are asked from polity and governance. 3 to 4 questions are asked from international relations, although in IR it is quite difficult to dissect the same because we have one or two questions which are interdisciplinary in nature. For example, they are asking about any multilateral organization or international institution. They may mix it with geography. Okay, they have even gone to the extent of asking question that arrange the capitals in Southeast Asia from south to north. Okay, so they can ask an interdisciplinary question, especially with respect to IR. There is a huge possibility of asking a question which is geography in nature. It will be from geography, but it will be of IR. Okay, so whatever happens anywhere, okay, we have prepared a note how we'll be maneuvering with this what you call session. Okay, so the point is key, especially in international relations. For example, anything that happens in West Asia, or for that matter, they may ask a question on Sinai Peninsula, or if a flight got drowned in Southeast Asia, which is still to be found out. They asked a question next year, arrange all the capitals in Southeast Asia from south to north. Okay, so IR is quite interdisciplinary, but that is very much predictable also many a times. Okay, so with respect to this, okay, so with respect to polity, governance, international relations, if we just mention, because in paper 2 we have social justice, the entire syllabus has been drafted. The syllabus which was changed in 2013. Okay, so initially they added 2 more papers in the GS main stage. Okay, ethics, integrity, and aptitude, and all the 3 others papers, of course ethics, integrity, and aptitude also has been drafted in a very scientific way. things which are interdisciplinary, things which are related to each other have been put under one paper. For example, if we talk about society, so all the issues emanating from society, for example, caste-based discrimination, gender-related issues, many of them have their root in history. So society has been placed in paper 1 because the caste-based discrimination or any such discrimination has its root in history. So they have placed it along with history and geography is also one of the very important factors for history. So that has been placed in paper 1. But as a civil servant, you will be promoting social justice. As a civil servant, when you will be sitting in the office, you will be a subdivisional magistrate or district magistrate, you will promote social justice by various schemes, from Gati Shakti Yojana to Atal Pension Yojana, from Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana to Matritva Yojana, from Ayush to Ayushman Bharat to Indradhanush. So social justice has been placed in paper 2 because as a part of governance, social justice is of extreme importance. So you see the entire syllabus has been so prepared, GS paper 2, which has an element of interdisciplinary. For example, you see polity and governance. So polity, the entire political system, the understanding of the constitution, the understanding of the statutory bodies, the interplay between the constitutional and the statutory bodies. For example, you have National Commission for Minorities, National Commission for Women. How does it impact, or how does the National Commission for Backward Classes impacts and safeguards the interest of the backward classes? So there is an interplay of the bodies. That is something which you need to understand. They do not expect the civil services aspirant. You will be in a better position to understand the demand of UPSC if you just sit down and coolly think, what is the, what you call, requirement of a civil servant? What kind of civil servant they require? For example, in most of the state PSC examinations, you will not find international relations. Reason being very simple, state external affairs falls within the domain of the union list. So a state PSC officer will not be involved in any such negotiation. So state PSC syllabus will not have IR. What is expected from a civil servant? What is expected from a civil servant? You know that civil servant is, there is no doubt about that, one of the most interdisciplinary preparation in the country, where you will be studying about geography, history, polity, economy. So you will be involved in negotiations. And if I need another 12-hour session to explain this, that if you will be in engineering services, or you will be in economist services, or you will be IRS, or you will be in Department of Post, you will be involved in those negotiations many a times. Okay, so the syllabus has been so drafted. What they expect from a civil servant, very briefly, you should have an understanding of the constitution and the statutory bodies and extra constitutional non-statutory bodies also. So without going deep into what is the dynamics of Niti Aayog, they expect you to know what is cooperative federalism, what is competitive federalism, what is combative federalism, what are the indices released by Niti Aayog, what was the prime mandate behind constituting Niti Aayog. These things they expect you to know. So if you have a broad understanding of the constitution, you will be part of the executive, although you will be, the real executive is the political class, and the permanent executive, that is civil services, civil servants also are there. So they want you to have an understanding of the interplay between the various, what you call, various three organs of the state. So what is separation of powers? If you just go and see the question paper, most of the questions, they want you to have an understanding of the constitution. So always you will find, for example, DPSP. DPSP is one of the most easiest topic in the entire syllabus. Still, most likely in prelims as well as sometimes in mains, you will always find a question on DPSP. Although it is an easy topic, but DPSP is something very important. Why? Because these are the principles which are being directed by the constitution that the state will follow while making policies. So as a civil servant, you will be deeply involved in governance, and DPSP is the pamphlet for that governance. It is the instrument of instructions. So they will always ask a question. They may not be interested in you knowing how the tribunals inside function. They not be interested in you knowing that what is the process of what you call secretarial appointment inside Supreme Court. But they will be interested in you knowing how judges are appointed, what is the interplay of judicial review, how the judiciary safeguards the fundamental rights, how judiciary maintains the supremacy of the constitution, what is the position of judiciary in the interplay between executive, legislature and judiciary. So having a broad understanding of the constitution, and most of the questions which are framed in mains are from that perspective. So this is something which is there. Second, governance. With the in last, you can say 2-3 years, the element of governance has increased. Previously, UPSC used to ask questions which were directly from the constitution, that what is the function of finance commission, what are the issues and the major characteristic of functions of national commission for backward classes, do you think that the Supreme Court upholds the supremacy of the constitution, or very, very direct questions. Now a lot of questions they are asking from governance, especially in main stage of the examination and also in prelims. So 2 3 fundamental shift which can be witnessed in last 2 years. First is the element of governance has increased exponentially. First. Second important thing which you will see, that whenever UPSC is framing a question, they are asking questions which are more current, which are more what you call visible. For example, what do you mean by arrest? What do you mean by judicial custody? What do you mean by police custody? What is the role of enforcement directorate? How Central Bureau of Investigation and ED affects federalism in India? So all these important aspects where UPSC wants you to have an understanding. So governance becomes extreme important, but the catch in governance is that there is no prime standard textbook for governance other than the topics that have been mentioned in the syllabus. Role of civil services in a democracy, you have the e-governance, you have citizen charter, you have right to information. These are the explicit terms that are mentioned in the syllabus, other than some more like government schemes and all. Sometimes they interplay it with governance also, although it is also covered in social justice. So governance is something which is very, very dynamic, okay, and this is something which is of extreme importance. IR ke liye also, although IR you have to be very vigilant. Why? Because disproportionate time should not be given to IR. There will be 3-4 questions in main stage of the examination, and there will be 2 to 4 questions in prelim stage of the examination. Some of them would be interdisciplinary. So IR political theories related to IR theories and all. Main emphasis should be that anything that happens in the world, what will be the impact on our country? That is something which is important, that if something happens, there are 193 member states at UN, but what happens in a country, what will be the impact on our country? That is something which is important. Social justice, again, I will not isolate it from governance, because when you will be promoting social justice, that will be through governance. The basic standard definition of governance is the social, economic, political and other decisions taken by government. So governance is a verb, government is a noun. What is government? The set of people who have the authority to govern, and what they do is governance. So when you talk about of course, without what is the principal mandate of state? The principal mandate of the state is to maintain the sovereignty and integrity of India. That is the first important mandate of state. Second mandate of state is to maintain public order, because welfareism and everything will happen if there is a public order. So after maintaining the sovereignty and integrity of the country and maintaining public order, then they will adhere to the principles of directive principle and fundamental rights and all those things. Okay. So when they will be promoting welfareism, which is provided in Article 38 of the Constitution, the term welfare state, social, economic and political justice, and ruled by Supreme Court in Bhim Singh ji case that welfareism is a part of basic structure of the Constitution. So how can welfareism be promoted? How can social, economic and political justice should be done? One of them is social justice. So as a civil servant, especially from governance perspective, it is very, very important to understand that governance and social justice go hand in hand, and it should be starkly differentiated from society. Society is more about historical aspect, where you will bring its statistics from the contemporary, that theek hai bhai, National Crime Records Bureau says that this much incidents are committed towards women, or this is the caste based discrimination, or this is the conviction rate in National SC/ST Prevention of Atrocities Act, or Right of Persons with Disabilities Act, what all conventions on disabilities India has signed, what is the conviction rate, what are the rules that are made in that regard. Okay, that is something which is there, but there is an element of interplay with governance. Okay, so what should be our strategy to make this session more productive? First important thing, stick to basics. Stick to basics. Okay, if you see from the UPSC perspective, key first, if the kind of questions that are being asked in prelims are relatively less predictable, but the kind of questions that are asked in mains are very much predictable. Okay, if you have been reading newspaper throughout the year, if you have been writing your answer diligently, most likely all the questions that are asked, other than one or two questions which you may be completely blank, it may happen, you will be comfortably if you have written the answers throughout the year. In the prelim stage, UPSC has become a bit more unpredictable, although this time they were relatively better, but in the past they have shown where they have increased the unpredictability. Okay, so how can we overcome this? First thing that I strongly recommend is you have to be very, very thorough with your NCERTs. Okay, in polity stage of the examination, I would say that there are 2 or 4 NCERTs which are extremely important. Other subjects, of course, the respective faculties would come, but at any given time, at least 50 to 55% or 60% of the questions would be from the static part. So if you are very thorough, I have seen students in the class who are consistently, those students who have written means maybe possible they will qualify later, or they take 1 or 2 attempts. One consistent factor that you will find in students who are consistently qualifying for prelims at least is something that their base is very, very strong. So first important thing should be done, that your NCERT should be holistically covered. Why NCERT should be covered? First, basic questions that are asked in prelims. Sometimes they ask these questions in mains also. For example, they asked a question, what secularism of the West versus secularism of the East? Although it was an easy question, but to have an edge over others, or sometimes they ask about the principle of liberty and constitutionalism or separation of powers. So there are some NCERTs which I will recommend. Conventionally, this has been recommended many a times. One is Indian Constitution at Work. Then you have what you call political theory. Then you have Democratic Politics Part 1 and Democratic Politics Part 2. Now let me get more into it, that what will you get from covering these NCERTs? सबसे पहले Indian Constitution at Work will give you an understanding in what background our constitution was framed. It will give you a broad understanding of the objectives of the constitution. It will give you an understanding what you call how the Constituent Assembly drafted the constitution, and you will understand the psyche. So nobody can better explain you the constitution than the people who have actually drafted it. Okay, to add more, on 25th November 1949, Dr. Ambedkar gave a landmark speech where on 26th November 1949, the Constituent Assembly adopted the preamble, which actually ended the task of making the constitution, which came into force after 2 months. But on 25th November 1949, Dr. Ambedkar gave a long speech about what are the expectations from the constitution, what are the intricacies of the constitution, what is the interplay of organs, what is in a way constitutional morality, what the constitution seeks to achieve. So that speech is available on internet, although it is not required from GS perspective, but it gives, if you go through the synopsis of that speech. Okay, so Indian Constitution at Work will give you an understanding of how the constitution was drafted. Then this is undoubtedly the most important NCERT. This is political theory. Okay, in this NCERT, all the key terms, what do you mean by liberty? What do you mean by equality? What do you mean by fraternity? What do you mean by justice? What do you mean by secularism? What do you mean by freedom? What is the difference between liberty and freedom? What France can learn from Indian secularism? All those ideas that actually make India, all those ideas that the minds of the makers of the constitution can be understood, all those ideas that sum up our constitution, all those ideas that are the crux of our constitution. Of course, if we will be talking about political science, you will study about the thinkers in detail. But from GS perspective, this NCERT is actually too enriched. It will help you in writing 150 words answer in your main stage of the examination, and prelims, they have consistently asked questions from this. Okay. Next, we have Democratic Politics Part 1 and Part 2. Okay, these are taught usually 9th, 10th. Okay, so in this Democratic Politics Part 1 and Part 2, if you will read this will give you a basic understanding of democracy. What is democracy? How is it different from majoritarianism? Why we opted for parliamentary democracy? What do you mean by basic term state and all those things? Okay, so this four to chalo theek hai. If you have an understanding, you may once read, but these two though I will very, very strongly emphasize upon. So NCERT textbook, how are they going to help you? First, I'm not saying that they will be of immense help in mains. Okay, But out of 12 questions that UPSC will frame in the prelim stage of the examination, they will ensure that at least 2 questions or 3 questions are directly lifted from NCERT. Out of these 2-3 questions, most likely 1 or 2, both, would be very conceptual in nature, which will seemingly look to be very easy. But it is the place where majority of the students are trapped by asking a basic question that what do you mean by state, what do you mean by liberty, what do you mean by equality, what is equality. So these basic questions they ask where students a bit at times are uncomfortable. So if you will have a very good understanding of this political theory, then you will not make a mistake over there. Sometimes I have seen they have asked basic question from Indian Constitution at work, asking a question about Constituent Assembly, asking a question about a committee of Constituent Assembly. I don't find a reason why it cannot be completed in more than 1 or 2 days. Hardly it will take. So these 2 NCERTs. Next comes Indian Constitution.
Navigating the UPSC Civil Services examination journey is more than just academic effort. It requires mental resilience and personal growth. Introducing Antarbodh by Vision IAS, a dedicated program designed to nurture your well-being and personality development, tailored for UPSC aspirants. In this 36-hour program, spread over 12 weekend sessions, you'll gain insights and strategies too. Manage stress and maintain focus. Boost self-awareness and decision-making. Build resilience and emotional stability. Develop effective communication and leadership skills. Antarbodh provides personalized guidance with our mental health professionals, allowing you to explore your strengths and overcome obstacles in your UPSC journey. Interactive offline sessions include workshops, role plays, and guided activities, ensuring a hands-on approach to mastering key skills. Program start date 18th November, 1 p.m. Duration 36 hours, 12 weekend sessions. Join Antarbodh and equip yourself with the psychological tools to succeed in the UPSC journey. Are you struggling to complete your syllabus for the UPSC Prelims and Mains 2025? Is the lack of guidance stopping you from reaching your true potential? Vision IAS brings to you a dedicated, personalized mentoring solution to transform your prelims and mains journey. Enroll for the Lakshya Mentoring Program 2025 for strategic revision, practice, and targeted interventions. Attain high scores with key skill developments such as concept mastery, problem solving, answer writing, and time management techniques. Embark on your preparation journey with Lakshya Integrated Mentoring Program starting from 7th December. This comprehensive program offers unified mentoring for both prelims and mains 2025. Lakshya Prelims Mentoring Program 2025 starting from 10th December. Intensive program focusing on prelims 2025 preparation.
So these 2 NCERTs. Next comes Indian Constitution. Okay, अब Indian Constitution में undoubtedly UPSC aspirants, a person who is a civil servant, a person who is in All India services or Group A services or Group B services, although there are few Group B services, mostly it is Group A or All India services, it expected to have an understanding of the Constitution. So undoubtedly it is not necessary to remember all the articles which I consistently maintain in the class also, but you must have an understanding of the Constitution, what the Constitution wants to convey. One, what is the structure of the Constitution, how the various organs interact within the Constitution, how the organs derive their authority from the Constitution, what is the purpose of the Constitution, objective of the Constitution. These things are meant to be understood. I am again reiterating, you are not required to remember all the articles, but it is equally naive to say that no article is required to be remembered. I can open the previous year's question paper and show you consistently in last 3-4 years, UPSC has always asked an article by mentioning an article number. So it is wrong to say that no article is to be memorized. It is equally wrong to say that all the articles are to be memorized. You should have an understanding of one, the directive principles, the fundamental rights that you should have an understanding. And if UPSC is asking an article, it is with uttermost sincerity, I would say that if they are asking an article, it will be discussed in the class or it has been in news. UPSC cannot suddenly ask you Article 212. UPSC cannot suddenly ask you Article 236. UPSC cannot suddenly ask you Article 233. If they will ask you what all articles they have asked Article 109, 110, Money Bill. 109 read with 110. They have asked Article 112 of the Constitution. They have asked Article 38 of the Constitution. They have asked Article 87 of the Constitution. They have asked Article 76 of the Constitution. They have asked Article 32 of the Constitution. So if they have asked Article 16 Clause 4 and Article 335 of the Constitution, both of them are important from the perspective of reservation. So Constitution ko leke few points I would like to mention. First, you don't need to memorize the Constitution. Second, only those articles you need to remember which an average aspirant should remember. Third, there is no need to memorize those articles. UPSC can never expect a student to rephrase the article in the way it is mentioned in the Constitution. No, you just have a broad idea. Once or twice they have asked the article number also. Reason being that that year it has been in news. So you can prepare a list of articles. Hardly there would be after fundamental rights and DPSP, which I think you should broadly remember. Other than that, hardly there would be 7 to 8 articles when you need to remember, maximum 15 if I will say, even I will stretch. You should have an understanding of those articles. No need to memorize them, but you should have a broad understanding that what this article seeks to convey, even if they are asking one question, because there are hardly 6-7 questions which are asked from polity. Other questions would be from governance. So making mistake in one question is something which will dearly cost. Okay, and this is, so articles you have to go through. Next important thing, what you can do, you can download an app of Indian Constitution rather than having a hard copy, which also I don't prohibit. Any of the popular bare acts of the Constitution can be kept alongside, but having an app will equally do. So you will have an understanding of the Indian Constitution. 1 or 2 questions would be asked sometimes. For example, I'll say what all questions they have asked, that in order to understand the minds of the makers of the Constitution, which of the following shall be referred to? They asked a question about Attorney General of India in 2013. Then they asked what are the minds of the makers of the Constitution. Then they asked a question, Article 16 Clause 4 read with Article 335. Last year they asked a question on 16 Clause 4 and 335. This year they asked the question Article 109, popularly knowing that UPSC knows very well that students have a basic idea that money bill is in Article 110. So they explicitly mentioned 109, which also deals with money bill. For example, they will ask a question which is the Attorney General se related article question pucha. So sometimes they are asking those articles to test whether you have understood, whether you have gone through the Constitution or not. And another important thing, for example, if you take any standard textbook which is prescribed for UPSC, okay, so you will find the mention of term money bill. You will find the mention of term veto. For example, let's take the term veto. So Article 111 of the Constitution deals with the power of President to reject or what you call approve any bill, or the President can ask the House to reconsider a bill. So this we call it absolute veto, or we call it suspensive veto, or we call it pocket veto. So in the books you will find the term absolute veto, suspensive veto, pocket veto, but in the Constitution neither the term veto is mentioned, neither the term absolute is mentioned, neither the term pocket is mentioned. So UPSC is asking these kinds of, jaise they asked a question that the Constitution of India explicitly defines basic structure. The Constitution of India explicitly mentions judicial review. The Constitution of India, tomorrow they can ask, provides which of the following vetoes. They asked the question that when the government changes, Attorney General resigns. So these kinds of questions which are frequently mentioned in any standard textbook, but this is not mentioned in the Constitution. For example, we say special majority, simple majority, absolute majority, effective majority, but nowhere in the Constitution they have been classified as special, absolute, effective or simple. Only the majority is mentioned, which is interpreted as simple, absolute, effective or qualified. So UPSC is asking a question, according to the Constitution of India, Attorney General resigns when the government changes. According to the Constitution of India, judicial review is explicitly mentioned. So I am sure I have conveyed by this time that by asking this question, UPSC wants to test a very basic thing, that whether you have read the Lakshmikant or you have read the Constitution. यही बेसिक उनको चेक यही करना है कि लक्ष्मीकांत में इट इज क्लियरली मेंशन्ड एब्सोल्यूट मेजॉरिटी, सिंपल मेजॉरिटी, क्वालिफाइड मेजॉरिटी एंड what you call special majority. So nowhere in the constitution all these majorities have been classified, or in the Lakshmikant or any book it is written absolute veto, qualified veto, pocket veto and suspensive veto, but nowhere in the constitution all these things are written. In fact, let me add, in the constitution no time is mentioned within which the president can take a decision over a bill. Since no time is mentioned, the scholars interpret it and implicitly call it pocket veto. So constitution ka, I would say you should have those articles which are important, fundamental rights and DPSP you should go through. Third important thing which I will link with governance now. Here the constitution and governance, there is a very thin line. For example, if they are talking about National Commission for Backward Classes, so Article 338B provides for National Commission for Backward Classes, chairman and 3 members, and president will appoint, and these are the functions. But this is a constitutional body. But UPSC is asking a question, do you think the National Commission for Backward Classes, how do you think the National Commission for Backward Classes performs its role effectively? So you can go to the website about us and what is the brief crux of the National Commission for Backward Classes. Just a few, I think last year only, I was in one of the current affairs, I was talking about that National Commission for Scheduled Tribe or Scheduled Classes, one of the commission's report was delayed. So this was covered in the current affairs. So they can ask a question about the nuances and the intricacies of these commission. So all these constitutional and statutory bodies, there can be 3 kinds of questions. First question can be, what is exactly mentioned in the constitution? What is their function? By which constitutional amendment they came into being? Or they were part of the original constitution first. Second important thing should be, what is their function? What is there actually on ground? What all other than those mentioned in the constitution, practically what they are doing? What is their objective? How they are affecting governance? And third should be critical analysis or department related standing committee on law and justice making a recommendation. So most likely the first part may be asked in prelims, that Article 338B provides for National Commission for Backward Classes. This is the function to provide for constitutional safeguards and all those things. And the report shall be tabled before the Houses of Parliament. All these basic things. Second part, that what is the intricacies you will find from their website or some conventional literature. If the parliamentary standing committee makes a recommendation related to that particular body, that you should go through. So here there is an interplay, and I can talk about many such questions. For example, you have Niti Aayog. It is neither mentioned in the constitution nor mentioned in the law. So, but Niti Aayog was constituted on 1st January 2015 by a cabinet resolution. So now UPSC picked up a line. If you will open the website of Niti Aayog, it is mentioned cooperative federalism and you have competitive federalism. So they asked the question, so what are the indices released by Niti Aayog? What are the, if there is any recent report about Niti Aayog? How is Niti Aayog different from a planning commission which was established on 15th March 1950? So you should, जो organizations हैं उनसे related, if there is a news that is coming in newspaper, if there is a discussion that is a recommendation being given by department related standing committee, that will be covered by Vision IS daily. Also they release everyday current affairs or they release the monthly compendium, that you need to remember. Next important thing, for example, most of the schemes that the government of India is drafting is based on DPSP. Most of the scheme, for example, social, economic and political justice in Article 38 or 39A to F. So if, for example, Article 42, Maternity Benefit Act hai bhai, the state shall provide just and humane conditions of work and maternity relief. So Article 42 leads us to Maternity Benefit Act 1961. So we cannot expect UPSC to ask a question on Article 42, that what is Article 42? But they will ask you, what is the just and humane conditions of work mein, uske baad maternity relief, critically analyze Maternity Benefit Act 1961 1961, or they will ask, do you think the Maternity Benefit Act 1961 has been able to secure maternity relief, or do you think the Maternity Benefit Act has been able to promote gender justice and increase the participation of gender workforce? So the critical, so something related to Article 42. For example, you are talking about Article 41, right to work. They may ask you critically analyze the Mahatma Gandhi National Rural Employment Guarantee Act. For example, they are talking about Article 19(1)(a), right, freedom of speech and expression also includes right to information. Freedom of speech and expression also includes right to information. So they may ask a constitutional article implicitly providing for right to information, and the Right to Information Act, and the critically analyze that Central Information Commission vacancies are always in news. The disposal, how many cases have been disputed, precisely facts they don't want. But broadly, what is the performance of the commission? So in this particular thing, I will emphasize on governance. You will analyze those bodies which are provided in the constitution, or those bodies which are provided in the law. If there is a recommendation by department related standing committee, if there is a judgment by the Supreme Court, all these important things are which are very, very important. Next, if you will talk about the international relations, I'll briefly touch. Next, if you will talk about the relevance of newspaper, which I will emphasize. अब गौर से सुनिए कि now UPSC has already exhausted most of the questions from polity. One of the prime source which at least 1 lakh or 2 lakh students, whatever number of students, serious students I'm talking about, everyone will go through, most likely they will ever go through Lakshmikant or Vision IS printed material. Okay. Of course, the current affairs is provided, and daily current affairs is also provided to what you call supplement the existing static resources. Static question have already been exhausted by UPSC. One. Second, if they will keep asking static questions, most likely those students who are preparing for last 4-5 years, they will have advantage over those students who have started preparing, because it is no brilliance or intelligence that you will answer a question which is based on fact. If you have been preparing for years, you will be in such a position that it will be all on your tips, you will immediately answer. So UPSC has to balance everything. They have to ensure that those students who have started preparing are also at the level playing field. So I can talk till today evening the number of questions which UPSC has asked from contemporary relevance, and they have reduced the number of questions which they used to ask from the static part, from Article 1 to 4 about majority to citizenship to fundamental rights to DPSP to the office of president. These kinds of questions they used to ask, that in order to become the president of India, one has to be a citizen by birth. In order to be a president of India, which of the following is an electoral college? In order to be the president of India, if there is a dispute related to election, it will be decided by the president. These are those factual questions which are directly based on the articles of the constitution. Now gradually over the period of time, UPSC is asking less questions. Now they are asking a question in mains that discuss how the president is elected in France with that of India, because that year the election was conducted in France. Recently the election has been conducted in United States, so they may ask to compare the president of US with that of India. Third important thing, what is the constitutional position of president? Do you think the office of president is a rubber stamp? Do you think the president is merely a ceremonial office? Okay, so these kinds of questions they are asking. And when it comes about the what you call the central government, Article 77 clause 3, the president shall make rules for the convenient transaction of the business of the union. So for example, recently IRMS service was created some 2-3 years back. Recently the cabinet approved demerger. Initially there used to be services like Indian Railway Traffic Service, Indian Railway Account Service, Indian Railway Personal Service, now they merged all the services with technical services and created IRMS, Indian Railway Management Service. Recently the cabinet took a decision, no, the merger was not that fruitful, because we need people from engineering background in technical area of railways. So they have demerged the service, and all those have again gone to the what you call Indian Engineering Services, through which they will recruit IRSC, Indian Railway Service of Engineers. So what is important from this perspective? all those decisions which are taken by government, how the, for example, they may ask a question that key, do you think that mid-level entry in civil services will increase the productivity? Yeah, role of civil services in bureaucracy, yeah, role of civil services in a democracy will be bettered by the mid-career induction of the civil servants. What are the positive aspects? What are the challenges? Second, administrative reform commission ने क्या recommendation दिए? What are the recent challenges? Why the government of India, although you have to be very suave in that by not being too politically oriented, but the government, the UPSC withdraw the notification because there was an uproar related to reservation and all those things. We are not concerned with the politics, but what are the steps? जैसे national capacity building program for civil services, civil servants, mission Karm Yogi, IGOT platform. These are the things which I have been mentioning in the class and UPSC has already asked them. So newspaper mein time and again you will get articles which are very, very productive, which are very, very insightful. An article is approximately about 1200 words. Okay, so undoubtedly 1200 words are not important, but there will be 5 to 7 sentences in the article that you will incorporate in your, for example, you are talking about health. Okay, so what is the, for example, there was an article that public health falls in the state list. That was one of the things with respect to which there was a demand, because in COVID, the states were having their different strategy because public health falls within the state domain. So what is important from that perspective, ki what are the, if there is an article in newspaper, you have to keep a track. Newspaper is something where it is, if you will start reading newspaper diligently, you will cover it in a very short duration, say 45 to 1 minutes to 1 hour. Usually I see students saying that we take 2 hours. Most of the things in newspaper, for example, paper page 2, page 3, which deals with the local politics of the city from where you are watching this class, page 4, and those papers, which companies and quarter profit is there and which company is performing well, all those important things which are there in the newspaper from the perspective of someone else, but not for UPSC. So newspaper mein 3-4 things you need to remember. Pehla, you need to whichever editorials are appearing which have a direct bearing with UPSC syllabus, that you will prepare a short notes, not always, but something where somebody writes an article, he's giving his entire experience into 1200 words. Okay, so some points you will get. Second important thing, newspaper enriches your vocabulary. It gives you an insight how to write a very good answer. It let you understand, follow a thing in chronology. In August you read that the negotiations are going on. In September you read that the foreign minister, external affairs minister visited. In October you will see that the prime minister visited and an agreement was signed. So you will follow something in chronology. For example, an incident happened, something related to an incident happened, then the a committee was constituted. For example, unfortunate Nirbhaya incident happened. After this, Verma committee was constituted. After that, there were some reforms in the criminal laws. So when you read the newspaper, you understand things in entirety. I'll give you a month's current affairs, you will read, something will be given in background, but that intellectual insight, which will let you have an understanding of the entire topic from that perspective, will come when you read newspaper. So newspaper is a multi-dimensional benefit. First, it will enrich your vocabulary. Second important thing, it will give you a very good understanding of the topic. Third important thing, you will learn how to frame an answer. You will be updated with the current facts. So current affairs, monthly current affairs module is excellent, but of course it cannot replace the newspaper. So it is very, very pertinent for you. Newspaper mein, if a political leader is making a statement, if a particular alliance won the election in recently concluded state assembly election, if there is all these things are of no significance. Somebody is being appointed as deputy minister is no significance. But what is important is whether the term deputy chief minister is mentioned in the constitution or not. There is no such post as deputy chief minister in the constitution. The Supreme Court has said it is equivalent to the rank of a cabinet minister. So tomorrow, if 2 people have become deputy chief minister, honorable leaders in Maharashtra, that is is not important. But if the post of deputy chief minister is in news time and again in most of the states that we are talking about, so whether the term deputy chief minister, the UPSC may ask a question, is derived from the constitution. So that particular incident, if something is being, for example, there is an issue related to EVM, if a political party or a political group is raising suspicions about EVM, that is not important. What is important, that whether there is a provision related to EVM in the Representation of People Act 1951, what are the issues surrounding EVM, what steps Election Commission has taken to overcome them, then your answer must be empirical in that direction. If there is a criminalization of politics, a particular politician is convicted, we are not concerned. We are concerned in section 8 subsection 1, 2, 3 and 4 of Representation of People Act. What are the reasons behind criminalization of politics? So this broad understanding you will develop while reading newspaper. And one last thing, while reading newspaper, you must understand what is to be skipped and what is to be read. Because if I would have had newspaper now, I would have said, and you, of course, I know many of you have this idea all now. Those who are starting, we have this session for them. So if you go through the newspaper, you will be in a better position to, most of the news, many a times even appearing on the first page, is not of extreme importance from UPSC perspective. If there is a change, now for example, there was a recent change in classical language status. So it is less likely that UPSC will ask a factual question that which all new languages have been included in classical language, which you should know because UPSC may ask, but state PSC definitely is likely to ask. At the same time, for UPSC, it is important to know ki bhaiya, what are the criterias which a language will fulfill, then it will become a classic language. First. Second important thing, what are the benefits if the language is included or given a status of a classical language? Third important thing, what are the provisions in the constitution related to languages, article 343 to article 351? Is there a constitutional body that safeguards the interest of linguistic minorities? So whether the constitutional body, what are the steps are being taken to safeguard the interest of linguistic minorities? These are the things which are of extreme importance. So reading newspaper is something which is there. Now I'll briefly touch upon these two, what you call, I think one is IR and other is social justice. So I'm just summing up. When it comes to polity, you should have an understanding of the constitution. That is something which is important. No need to remember the articles word by word. Fundamental rights and DPSP you should remember. Other than that, there are 10 to 15 articles which you should have an idea what they are talking about. How you will go through this? Whenever you are reading a post that is appearing time and again in newspaper, you should have an app of the constitution and you will go and locate that in the constitution. For example, there was a constant discussion about Attorney General which was reflected in the prelims question paper. This year, the Deputy Chief Minister post is being mentioned time and again. So I would not be surprised if the same is, so immediately you should think, okay, there is a political, what you call something, negotiations going on. So whether this term is mentioned in the constitution. For example, there was a petition, if there is a petition filed related to citizenship. So what are the provisions in the constitution related to citizenship? Next and most important, which the syllabus of UPSC says, broad understanding of the constitution. So broad understanding of the constitution mein, the best thing would be newspaper, because anything at least from Places of Worship Act, whether recently, today morning I was reading that a special bench will be constituted to look into the constitutionality of Places of Worship Act. So whether the Places of Worship Act violates Article 14 of the Constitution, 15 or any such, that will be determined. Okay. So the point is that will be covered in newspaper. If there is an issue related to a religious site or a religious place, how does the constitution impacts the same? What kind of secularism we practice? Whenever something will happen, within a day or two, the newspapers will bring an article by a scholar who belongs to the same field. If they are talking about triple talaq, a person who is an expert in Muslim law. If they are talking about the, what you call, the rights of what you call any disabled person, what is the current status? If there is an issue related to the maternity relief, so these articles will be of extreme help. Now, last but not the least, international relations and social justice. International relations is one thing where, first of all, there are standard textbooks. Okay, so from Pax Indica to so many textbooks which retired civil servant, for diplomats have written. The what you call in the class, you will have a broad understanding of what is the phases of foreign policy from 1947 to 1960, 59, 60 around, and what happened, how those things. So three aspects are there. Three to nahi, there are 4, 5, but broadly. Pehla, you should have an understanding of the time frame of Indian foreign policy. Broadly, you know what was the foreign policy, how liberalization has impacted the foreign policy, how our foreign policy and all those things which I don't want to repeat. So a broad understanding of the history of Indian foreign policy. Ab isme there are certain standard textbook, honestly speaking, which are of no significance at all. Why? Because in the Vision IS material and ample of quality literature you will find where you will have the broad history of Indian foreign policy. Even if you will read those books, they are very good from developing an insight. Okay, but UPSC is asking 3 to 4 questions, so no need to go that deep one. Second important thing, the current affairs. This is one topic where current affairs is of paramount significance. So you will, if there is a negotiation going on, or if there is how the diaspora has affected the Indian, what you call role of diaspora in raising the profile of our country. So current affairs is of uttermost importance. So either you will stick to the, what you call the PT 365 and Mains 365. Some places you may find some articles appearing, jaise Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership. So what the Prime Minister said while addressing the ASEAN, that why India is not joining the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership. What are the areas like agriculture, dairy and all with RCEP, India joining RCEP will impact us. What are the benefits that could have happened if India has joined RCEP? Why the Honorable External Affairs Minister yesterday talked about the relevance of Quad. So these articles keep on appearing. So newspaper, sometimes making your notes and also relying upon the current affairs material, be it PT 365 and Mains 365, some interdisciplinary geography thing. If something is happening near Sinai Peninsula, what is the location of Mediterranean Sea? What is the location of Red Sea? What is the location of Pacific Ocean? If something is happening in Ukraine and Russia, so geography question also they can ask. So here I would say, one, you can refer to any of the standard material that is available. Books and all not very fruitful. You may read one if you have that interest. Political science, of course, you have thinkers also of higher. Second, the entire happening of the UPSC is not interested in you knowing that X was elected as the president of Venezuela or the prime minister of Nepal. This UPSC. What is the policy of Nepal? What is Mao's 5-finger policy? How Nepal is a buffer state between India and China? What is the India-Nepal Friendship Treaty? What are the current dynamics of India-Nepal relationship? How do you think, now sometimes they ask a polity governance and IR, do you think the role of social media has become so relevant that it can impact international relations? Comment. So the role of social media, how the kind of information that is disseminated at a faster pace, the recent uprising or instability in South Asia, how will that affect? So these are current affairs. You will find ample of literature in democratization of knowledge. You will find ample of quality literature in newspaper and certain other prominent sources. Otherwise, if you'll go to the website of Ministry of External Affairs, country-wise they have given what has been India's history with them. So trade statistics, I don't think you need much. For example, with China, if there is too much of a what you call deficit, trade deficit, definitely, then you should have broad statistics. Otherwise, for IR, having broad understanding of the past, some basic things what have happened, and next, what is the contemporary relevance? If there is, today morning we are hearing about the turmoil in Syria, what impact, if any, will it have on India? All those things you should need to understand. Now something newspaper I have said, social justice ke liye,
get on the right track to commence your journey for the UPSC Prelims 2025 with the Fast Track course. An effective strategy will not only lead you to succeed in the prelims, but is also your launch pad to proceed to the mains. Starting from 19th November at 1 p.m, enroll to transform your journey with coverage of GS Prelims syllabus, regular practice, performance assessment and feedback, dedicated mentorship and guidance. How will the program help you? Result-oriented preparation in GS and current affairs, efficient time and resource management, development of problem-solving skills, motivation, confidence building and enhanced exam readiness.
There are hundreds of schemes that are going on. One. Second, after the Finance Commission increased the share of states from 32% to 42%, quantum jump of 10%, which was reduced to 1% later by 15 Finance Commission, a large number of center sector schemes, okay, which were taken. Now the center is contributing some, and there is center sector schemes and centrally sponsored schemes. Okay, recently I was reading that the recent Finance Commission the government has requested the recent Finance Commission to increase some allocation for the center, because there was a quantum jump from 32 to 42%. So many of the schemes which were completely run by the center, okay, those schemes over the period of time, the center has reduced its share. Either they have been shifted to center sponsored scheme where center and state both will contribute, or center is asking the state to take care. Now the point is that there are so many schemes, okay, it is practically not possible to remember all of them. So what all schemes UPSC has asked in prelims, they have asked easy schemes like Atal Pension Yojana, usme age पूछ दिया, they asked the age because that year the scheme was in news. Recently they have asked Gati Shakti Yojana, they have asked right of person with disabilities. So सबसे पहले what are the important schemes you should know? Second, what are the elements of the scheme, because this UPSC has asked that what is the age bracket and those. This you will find in the any compilation that you will find of all the schemes, okay. You will find this. If you are appearing for state PSC, in state PSC they ask the schemes related to the state. In fact, there is more predictability in state. All the schemes they compile at some place, you will find at any of the social media sites, and usually what they do, there are questions which are directly in the prelims and the main state. In state PSC they ask the state economic survey and all, but we are not here for that. Coming to UPSC, there are n number of schemes which are there, but there are only few schemes which they have asked in mains. So those schemes which have already transformed the rural landscape, those schemes which are important, you not only know the content of the scheme, you will find ample of literature on internet. If you will show you Economic and Political Weekly ka koi article mil jayega, you will find an article of some standard source where somebody or the other has analyzed that scheme. Few points you should have, you note down, prepare a list of schemes which are important, only few, not very too deep, you don't need to go. That will do something in social justice, first thing. Second thing, social justice and society is different. They have society is in paper 1, social justice is in paper 2. By syllabus aspect, they are different, but we cannot what you call differentiate them. Jaise, for example, what are the schemes for women liberation, emancipation, or safeguards of the women? So gender-based injustice is something which is in paper 1, but at the same time, you have so many schemes of government of India, so paper 2 bhi hai. So thoda sa paper 1 statistical data will help you in paper 2 and those schemes, how these schemes have, for example, female feticide or infanticide, or what you call the feticide that happens, okay, although feticide, infanticide, so by and large doesn't happen, okay. Feticide sometimes, that is preconception, prenatal diagnostic techniques act 1994 is there. So what is the preconception, prenatal diagnostic techniques act? I'm not asking you to memorize, but I'll not be surprised if UPSC asks to critically analyze what are the steps that have been taken to stop female feticide in India, okay. So a broad understanding of this sex ratio, although we are waiting for the census data, then we'll be in a better position to say how we have performed in last 15 years when it comes to sex ratio. Although on the basis of Aadhaar enrollment and all, data are released wise, sometimes I go through, but Aadhaar enrollment, because most of the child gets enrolled with Aadhaar also, so sometimes we have data. So the census that is going to be conducted will be having a more empirical data. It is a statutory exercise under the Census Act of 1948. So the important point is social justice mein all those things. Another thing is, for example, if there is an issue that has rocked the parliament, then something which is of importance, what if the parliamentary standing committee has made a request on those things, that you need to go through. So these are things I think broadly if you will follow, you will be able to do. Especially in this part, newspaper becomes important. You have to go through the department related standing committees. If any new committee on Western Ghat or any such thing is coming, if there is a new committee on fundamental rights, or if there is an observation made by Law Commission of India, what is the, if any of its report has come. So all these things will be repeated in newspaper. UPSC is very simple. It cannot allow you to become a civil servant by reading those 7 books which are available at any of the competitive area. So they cannot allow the students to buy 7 books, memorize them and become civil servant. Most of the questions I would percentage to, I will not deliberately say, but a large majority of questions which UPSC is asking these days are based on current affairs. So, and also the reason being, see, it has become easy to access information. Similarly, UPSC has also turned its what you call way of asking question. Please understand this. Before 15 years, asking a current question, UPSC would give a second thought before asking too much a dynamic question, because the quality of literature that was available to the student was very less. Either they were accessing newspaper, or they were, now with the advent of information, everything from annual status of education report to what you call the National Crime Records Bureau, to the judgment of the Supreme Court, to any recommendation made by department related standing committee, you have ample of information available on internet. So UPSC is also rephrasing its set, and they are asking questions which are more dynamic in nature. So I think if you will be more vigilant throughout the year, always understand 2 or 3 important things are there. First, the syllabus is, although the syllabus has been well defined, but it requires a very strong consistency. It is not tough, but it requires a 1 year or a long period of consistency. First thing. Second important thing, of course, all the faculties would come, and you are aware about that also, ki the answer script is a communication between you and the examiner. The examiner is not aware about your name, your ethnic, religious, class, caste, regional, linguistic, any background. The examiner has an answer script before you. Without any premeditated thought, the examiner will evaluate your answer script. So you must learn the art of presenting yourself in a very, very wonderful, expressive way, that you will learn from going through the answer scripts of the toppers. Okay. And you can also find the synergy, how you are writing, if any corrections are to be made. Writing an answer throughout the year is something which is going to help you. Okay. So other faculties would be coming. They will be talking about these things. Okay. So, and social media also, see, we have been, what all areas, time management remains, smart study techniques I have talked about. Revision, of course, is something we have prepared. A revision is of extreme importance, especially in prelim stage of the examination and mains, when you see students who are going through a new topic 2 days before exam. Believe me, if you will revise the same things again and again, there is more likely to score than to go through new things. So don't just write before the exam, rather go through the things that you have already covered. Revision is one of the most boring things. To do something, especially if it is your second attempt, then doing the same thing again and again is something which is boring. But success lies in that boredom. Okay, so revision is something which I am talking about. So we started from preparation. We have mentioned about the thing, time management, especially in mains, is important. Smart study techniques, I'm sure sir must have communicated before this session. I'm again reiterating the same thing. Revision, of course, is something which is very, very, believe me, revision is of uttermost significance. If you will develop the habit of revising things, then in the exam, just before the exam, you will be way more confident. There is no need to cover too many topics right before the exam. That you can do, just you can stop doing new things right before the exam, because it will confuse you more, rather than revise the things which are available. Smart newspaper reading I was talking about. One topic that is there, which is careful use of social media and engaging with the students. Engaging with productive students and peer group which is productive in nature is something which is always going to be fruitful. Social media is something which is a double-edged sword. Okay, so on the one hand it has reels, on the other hand you can use something for your judicial purpose. Okay, so I think more or less we have covered the things. If you have any question, I'll answer. Any question? Want to ask anything? See, this is the is Lakshmikant enough? The answer lies in going through the mains question paper of 2024, mains question paper of 2023, 2021, and the prelims question paper of last 4 years. You will get your answer that Lakshmikant is not enough. Just download the question paper and see whether this thing has been asked in, if UPSC is asking about, do you critically analyze Right to Person with Disabilities Act, or do you think Right to Free and Compulsory Education Act is able to incentivize school education in India, or critically analyze Gati Shakti Yojana or National Capacity Building Program for Civil Servant. All the questions that have been asked in mains, just go and locate in Lakshmikant. You will not be able to locate because they don't exist. Okay, so Lakshmikant is undoubtedly an excellent book For somebody who doesn't have an idea of the constitution, it will make you have an understanding of the constitution, and it will give you a very solid what you call basics. But of course it is not enough. Reason bahut sare hai. Few, one, it is not incorporating the current affairs. It doesn't have that liberty of space to concentrate on critical analysis. Two important aspects are there. So I think it is good for a basic understanding, but it is not enough. Lakshmikant in Article 22 talks about judicial custody, but UPSC is asking what is the difference between judicial custody and police custody. Lakshmikant talks about personal liberty. UPSC is asking what is the difference between payroll and furlough. Lakshmikant talks about the what you call that no person shall be punished more than what it was on the day of commission of that offense. UPSC is asking, Lakshmikant is talking about Article 22, that every person shall be produced before the magistrate within 24 hours, excluding the time of journey. Last year UPSC asked a question on Prevention of Terrorism Act. That was something which was quite older question, and they asked an interpretation of Article 22. So directly, for example, in Lakshmikant they have mentioned untouchability is abolished and practice in any form is forbidden. Then SC/ST prevention of UPSC is asking, do you think the act is enough to act serve as a deterrence for, they may ask for offenses against the members of SC/ST community. So I would say it's a wonderful textbook, but it is not able to, previously it was not able to cater to the aspirations of mains. Now I can conveniently say that it will not be able to be suffice for prelims as well as mains both. So you can go through the book, it will give you a wonderful understanding, but while going through the book, when you will develop a very good understanding of the what you call Lakshmikant, then all the issues that are mentioned or the terms that are mentioned in Lakshmikant, you have to relate that with current affairs. And one more, since he has asked this question, I will add, there is a common question, DD Basu, Subhas Kashyap, MP Jan or any other constitutional textbook. I'm not saying that DD Basu or Subhash Kashyap should be studied, because for UPSC you don't require them. But I'm not saying that you can completely ignore. If you want, what you can do, what are the areas, though repeated 5-6 areas hai jisse UPSC conceptual question पूछ रही है. 5 or 6 areas are there. One is preamble, other is Article 14, other is Article 21, principle of natural justice, due process of law, and Article 25, separation of powers, and to an extent judicial review. So I'm not asking you to go through DD Basu or Subhas Kashyap, but those key conceptual questions, just go and see last 10 years question paper and see how many times conceptual questions has been asked from these topic. So separation of powers ho, judicial review ho, preamble ho, secularism Article 25 ho, right to life Article 21, and equality principles in Article 14. These are the areas where UPSC is not only asking a factual question but also a conceptual question. So regarding those textbook, I can think one of them you can read only these 5-7 topics you can read from a standard book other than any provided book. Then it will give you an understanding on the conceptual aspect. I think this is more than enough. If you have any other question. So we are wrapping up the conversation. The respective faculties would be coming and they will take other sessions. Okay.